The hour is 5:30. Welcome to the special call meeting of the Danville City Commission. This evening, Thursday, May the 16th, April 26th.
Whatever.
I'm wishing April 26th, 2018. The first item on our agenda is a banner request regarding the Jennie Carol 5K race. We have with us Miss Lori Ann Clark. Ms. Clark, microphone's yours.
Thank you all very much for letting us squeeze in here at this special meeting. I was determined to not let this slip up on me, and it still did, so I apologize.
It's okay.
But we've got our 10th annual race coming up on May the 12th, and it'll be downtown. We end at Center College. The center is always very supportive of our race, and if we get the numbers we expect this year, we will have had 4,000 participants over the 10 years. And we've raised over $145,000 for Backpack Kids. So they are really busy. I was with a member of the board today, and they are feeding 120 families a week. They're sending home food with 120 different children, I should say. So definitely the need is there, and we were just hoping to get our banner put up so we could get some publicity and ensure a big turnout.
Mr. Scott, I assume this banner meets all the requests of the city?
It certainly does.
Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the banner request for the Jennie Carol 5K.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have it, Commissioner Terry. Thank you. Discussion? Wish you the best of luck in your race.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Have a good evening.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Sure you don't want to stay around? Item 2 is our preliminary budget presentation for the fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Commission, I'm pleased to be here tonight to give an overview of our proposed budget for all funds for the next fiscal year. The general fund, minor funds, our utility fund, and our capital fund and 10-year forecast. Let me mention for our common understanding, we did prepare a number of handouts for the audience that may be here to follow along. The budget detail is so many lines, it doesn't really work in terms of an overhead projection, and so we will place on our webpage the actual budget document following this meeting, recognizing that it's still in draft form, along with this memo trying to provide an overview of that budget. But again, we're glad to be here. This tonight represents, I'm not sure how many hours of work, but it's a cooperative process that began with our retreat of this commission back in November of last year, followed by department head meetings and cooperation from all of those in making this document come together and allowing me to present it tonight. I would suggest to the City Commission there is a lot of detail in here and a lot to cover, and we've handled this in different ways in prior years, but tonight I would request that basically I go through the presentation in some detail through all the documents and highlight those things that are different, because if you do have questions, probably I'm going to get to it at the appropriate stage anyway, and that will help me from getting lost in the weeds perhaps and stay on track a little better, and I think it might facilitate our common understanding a little better. So with that preview, it's important, I think, for us as a commission and a city governing body and a city as a whole to, as we begin this discussion tonight about what we hope to do next year, to have a good sense of where we are financially at the present time. And so as we consider that question and that need to know where we are and where we hope to go, it suggests that we look at our available fund balance as of the last audit. And that general fund balance, as reflected in the audit for fiscal year 2016, ending June 30th, 2017, showed a total fund balance of $9,932,936. We have, of that total, $783,452 of restricted funds that are allocated for various bond covenants and other purposes. So as of our last audit, we had a total fund balance unrestricted of $9,149,482. Now, in looking ahead, we have carefully reviewed our resources and our appropriations for the current year. And we have concluded that the total fund balance will further decline this fiscal year and will be approximately $8,397,121 as we end this fiscal year on June 30th, 2018. And the principal reasons for that further decline in our fund balance are listed here on this page. We're planning, before the fiscal year ends, to purchase our new ladder fire truck for $1,500,000. We're going to continue to make parks and trail capital improvements in the amount of $259,100. We've got some capital upgrades to our fire station on the bypass of $200,000. And we have been in the process since before January of relocating our communication center to this building in terms of retrofitting and so forth. And that is costing $250,000 in terms of retrofit cost. So in considering that the fund balance is going to continue to decline as of the end of this year for the reasons noted, we're looking ahead to our next year's budget as it may be finally approved by you. And we further expect at the end of the next fiscal year, June 30th, 2019, to have a further decline in our total fund balance. And that approximate total, as we can crystal ball it at the present time, and estimate, is that it will be $6,032,443. And again, why is that decline going to occur? It's by decision of our commission and city government to make further improvements that are necessary for the continued benefit of the community. We have a plan to complete the renovation of our Public Works building, in which we previously borrowed money, and that's $640,000 remaining for that renovation. Upgraded fire equipment of $451,000, and capital upgrades to parks and trails of $258,600, which is net of the $100,000 grant applied for the construction of our planned mountain bike trail. We are going to be required to move and upgrade our central communication tower next to the existing fire station downtown. That's going to be $125,000. Various police equipment will be $175,000 next year. It is essential that we upgrade our finance utility billing software, and that's a major, almost once in a lifetime, I will say, upgrade, but it's been many, many years since that's occurred, and that's $500,000. There's a public service equipment of $200,000 for various trucks and things noted in our capital budget, which we'll get to, and the beginning implementation of our wayfinding study, a cost of $50,000. So our summary of the proposed fiscal year, next year's budget, 2018-19 budget for all funds, is found on page 1 of this attached budget in your binder. I would suggest, for ease of understanding and to facilitate that you might have two documents in front of you, both this memo and then flipping to the budget. So as I go through this, you can make reference on the draft proposed budget, those items. And I think it will hopefully aid in our mutual kind of following along if we do that. That's what I'm trying to do here. So again, on the, you've got the index page or the the subject matter page at the beginning of that draft budget, and then on page 1 is the summary. And you'll see for all funds, our total resources projected next year are $61,750,951, which includes all funds carry forward, all the carry forward balances. Appropriations for all funds are $51,642,127, and our reserves, all funds, next year are $10,108,824. That's a lot of revenue and expense.
You keep this up, we're going to be talking about real money.
Yeah, pretty soon, that's true. Now, looking at the revenue, is presented on page 2. A general fund summary is on page 2. And the biggest change from the prior years in resources is special purpose revenue, and we're proposing that we issue a bond in the amount of $9.5 million. You will see that in that document, and I'm trying to see where that is listed. It's actually on page 3, the next page, page 3. That's footnoted as footnote number 5 on that budget document. The biggest change in appropriations in non-operating expenditures are capital expenditures of $12,074,208. And again, these items are related to our planned construction of a new fire station, the capital expenses that we've noted above as we began this conversation, and completion of the city's energy efficiency upgrades. And again, those costs are expected to be recovered over the lifetime of those operations of the new equipment. Let's talk about the big picture goals of this budget, and I've attempted to summarize those, and it's not all inclusive, but the proposed fiscal year 2018-19 general fund budget does reflect a number of commitments as contained in this budget. Number one, it's to operate within the existing tax structure next fiscal year. There are no proposed tax increases contemplated by this budget. It is structured to continue to deliver our essential services in what we believe is a cost-effective and reliable manner, which is going to require some additional staffing in order to do that. To continue to protect the safety of our citizens, which requires upgrading of our new fire truck and the construction of our new fire station, and continued funding of our police and fire departments of all those authorized positions. To continue to fund programs that maintain and improve our quality of life in our community. Our recent survey showed that that was a high priority of citizens in a variety of ways in terms of quality of life, and this budget does that in terms of support of Parks and Recreation, our trails programs, and support of other programs and activities to maintain our quality of life. To fully fund our pension obligations to our employees as required by law. There was a lot of discussion prior to now, this session, about pension reform and the increased cost on that, and I'll get into that in a minute, but this fully funds those obligations for the next year. To continue to make improvements, even in the face of declining state motor fuels tax receipts, to make improvements to our streets, roads, and sidewalks. We started that process last year and maybe even the year before that, but we're continuing that commitment to make those improvements. To balance and continue our funding support for economic development efforts. To continue to fund, although in many cases or some cases at a reduced amount, community service agencies that we have funded in prior years. To make improvements in our city cemeteries, and to plan for the future needs of the city in both the general fund and the utility fund. So details of these goals as it relates to the funding allocated to each are included in this document. There also, for our discussion, is a citywide organizational chart that will show what our current allocation of staffing is to support those functions and what changes are proposed. And so we have both our general fund and some more minor funds, our utility budget, and then our capital expenditures budget to go through. If you turn to the next page in my memo, it's maybe useful to just think a moment about some general comments before we get into the line-by-line or page-by-page review of the budget. This proposed budget, general fund budget, as well as within the utility and other fund budgets where appropriate, it recommends a 2% cost of living adjustment for full-time and part-time employees. It recommends 1% merit raises for full-time employees. These proposed changes in compensation are to be effective, proposed to be effective, if approved, July 1, 2008, for this full and part-time staff is indicated, except for the city manager. My next review is scheduled for November or December, so these changes would not apply to me if approved for the other employees. The proposed budget does reflect the required phase-in of the new higher contribution rates for the CERS, County Employee Retirement System, at the 21.48% of payroll for non-hazardous and 35.34% contribution rate for hazardous in each city department, whether it's general fund or utility fund. I want to make a point about the phase-in of the county employees' retirement pension contribution rates for cities, and it affects counties and other entities as well, as a result of the legislation that was passed in the final hours of the recent General Assembly. Although some aspects of the last-minute legislation are yet to be clarified, it seems certain that the phase-in of the CERS contribution rates will be as contemplated in this budget, in that they will be 12% higher, but not higher than 12% higher this year, and I've already mentioned what those rates are. But what this legislation that did pass does is to enable the Kentucky Retirement System Board in each successive year to continue to raise 12%, up to 12% in each year based upon the higher amount that was raised, the higher rate that was in effect the year before. So that does have the potential in successive years to impact our city's ability to continue to provide services until our pension obligations are deemed to be more fully funded by the state CERS board or KERS board, as the case is, which would result in lower rates. And it might stretch us in some future years unless we have new revenue sources or increased revenue sources from the current. But it's just a step up. You know, we feared about a $700,000 impact annually from this the first year. It's probably a little less, well, it's quite a bit less than that. It's probably closer to about $300,000 for the city. So it's a step up, but it's not devastating. But each and every year, it will be kind of a tightening noose, if you will. So let's go over the page-by-page highlights of the general fund budget. And I know this is about as interesting as drawing paint to the audience because they don't have the budget in front of them. So feel free to leave or stay. This will be on the webpage. In terms of our assumptions on revenue projections, you know, again, I mentioned no tax increases are proposed. Property, motor fuel, motor vehicle, or occupational net profits. The budget does reflect that in the next fiscal year, the city will receive the first full year of occupational license net profits now at the rate of 1.9% and 1.75% respectively, as enacted sometime in the past. So our total annual revenue generated from the occupational tax will be $8,100,000. That's shown on page 3 of that detail, and $1,080,000 from the net profits. The other significant change in prior years that's reflected in this budget's one-time thing only. For our year ending June 30th, 2018, it does reflect the fact that the city received $804,952.69 from Boyle County, representing all the monies that they had held from the distributed funds on 911 state-shared taxes. And so we are using those funds, as you know, to upgrade a new 911 dispatch center and all the related equipment, and the remaining balance of those funds that we have will be held for future needs. Yeah, it's just the equipment for the 911, the equipment upgrade. Right. We had a capital expenditure for the actual retrofit of the building itself. The balance of the energy efficiency loan, which we bonded at the amount of $9.5 million for energy efficiency and other purposes, is budgeted for the next year to complete those planned improvements. And a new loan or bond issuance of approximately $9.5 million is planned for the construction of a new fire station and to reimburse the general fund expense incurred for the new fire truck. Again, that's about $1.5 million to be received prior to June 30th of 2018. So those are the significant changes in the revenues and expenditures. We show prior years, 3 years projected for June 30th, and they projected for next year. Those are the significant differences. Let's talk about the actual budget recommendations under legislative and executive on page 4. I am recommending a number of staffing changes be made. These are, in my opinion, very necessary to prepare the city to not only meet current needs, but also future needs. I'm recommending a total of 6 new positions recommended in the general fund budget, and there will be one additional one in the utility budget for a total of 7 positions. I've got, and it's hard to go through this all at one time in a clear way, and apologize if I'm not doing that, but as we get to the organizational chart, you will see the great span of activities that we currently are trying to manage with very limited staff, and it's simply a very difficult process to do, and to be able to perform services in any of those in a really timely way, given the magnitude of everything that's necessary to be addressed. So having said that, given the magnitude of the demands, not only locally but regionally, as we provide water and sewer services regionally, one of the staff recommendations, one of the recommendations I'm making regarding staff, rather, is that our current city engineer be, in effect, promoted and transferred to the utility fund in a newly created position of utility engineer, or whatever suitable title we might determine that to be. We've been able to achieve what we have, which I would not say is insignificant by any means, but it's taken rather superhuman effort over multiple years to do that, and I just don't see that as a sustainable way going forward. And it's risky in terms of our responsibility to provide uninterrupted services to a large population base, both within and outside of the city. So we need to have someone who has a greater ability to focus full-time on those challenges, which are in themselves quite large and very important for our health, our safety, our economic development, and really our future. So I think this position is essential. It would continue to report to the city manager position. That utility, of course, is still governed by this commission. We, unlike some cities that have created separate bodies to govern utilities, I think personally it's better, and for a number of reasons that I won't go into, that we do not do that, that we continue to supervise those from the city commission level, and that's what we do. So that's one position. The secondary position would be recommended to be a administrative analyst position created in the utility fund that would be also of support to the city engineer or the utility engineer in that position. So those are two new positions. We have already, of course, authorized the position of city engineer in the city, and we would need to replace that by hiring someone else to address our city's general engineering needs and to oversee, as is currently the case, public works, stormwater, and cemetery operations. The other third position I would recommend that we do create and recognize is that we create the full-time position of Human Resources Director. We have, and I listed here, I said about 150 full-time employees and some part-time. Actually, as I counted through them, we've got currently 145. I'm recommending 7 new, which will make it 152. Plus, we've got 15 to 25 or more part-time employees, not counting other school crossing guards that we have throughout the year. All of this is a huge challenge for human resources in terms of recruitment, dealing with personnel matters, dealing with their retirement, their health issues, or their health insurance issues, rather. And we are past the time, in my judgment, where we need a full-time person dealing with that. We've got the inherent challenge and also and it's not to be minimized. The baby boomers are retiring. We've got attrition in all our departments. We've got the challenge of stepping up and attracting in a new and innovative and more, I think it's going to take a little more effort to do, the next generation of workers to come into our city. And that position is just needs to be a full-time position. We also self-funded our health insurance this time. There's going to be a bit more work there to be shared between our Human Resources Director and our Finance Director. It's not insurmountable, but it's just another thing that we need to do, and to do it well, we need to devote more regular attention to that subject. It has the opportunity for us to save money, and I think it will, but it's one that we need to be involved with on an ongoing basis. That position also currently, as you know, I mean, a lot happens in the combined office right now. We do risk management, we do claims, we do insurance coordination. Ms. Peak and I, for the last couple of years, have renegotiated our reinsurance, our health insurance renewals directly. And so it's amazing the amount of work that's now produced. But the demand is there, I think, for more specialized work, including that of developing better training curriculums for our staff and to aid in their progression and success. So there's that position. The existing position of city clerk would remain, and that position would be one that would support the functions of the traditional city clerk. It would respond to open records requests, aid this body in the passage of ordinances, resolutions, and maintenance of records and those types of traditional duties. We also have in the current budget a part-time college intern. That intern has actually been working at the water utilities, and we've got a small amount continued next year for that function. So that's the staffing recommendation just in the administrative area. Noting on that page 4 of the budget, contract services is funded at $124,000. In the estimated amount for the year ended to end on June 30th of this year, it's estimated to end at $115,000. It stepped up just a little bit, but that is proposed to be funded at that level to provide flexibility to address really specialized legal or other needs in lieu of creating a full-time position of, you might call it assistant city manager or another administrative system or something. It's hard to have in one body the diversity and specialization of knowledge that is required to be produced in a short time on a variety of subjects. For this next year, the amount mentioned, $124,000, planned for the general expenditure of $20,000, for example, which might be used to hire a part-time grant writer. We've talked about that for a couple of years, and we've had grant writers help us, and we've had free ones, and there's a variety of approaches, but that could be one use for that. We have been publishing this year a quarterly city newsletter to all our water customers that is proposed to be continued funded at $24,000 annual cost. The funding of the completion of the master park study, $40,000, and wayfinding signage of $30,000, and then sort of a non-specified, just a little flexible money at $10,000. So those are all, I think, very worthwhile needs to be funded. There's a line in the administration budget, in the legislative and executive budget for consultants. You'll see that listed about midway down at $45,000 in the new proposed budget. That is not what you would consider to be a typical consultants. These funds are used for our interpreters at City Hall, at our city commissions, at Martin Luther King events, for example, when we provided those. And there's also funds in that category to help our employees when they have employee assistance needs that might need specialized counseling and so forth. That's just the title that we've always had for that amount. The other amount in here is the amount for your consideration, is an increase for salary for mayor and commissions. Based upon earlier preliminary discussion that I've had with, I think, every one of you, I've included for your consideration a 50% increase in the annual salary provided to the mayor and city commissioners. I thought the last salary increase was back in 2001 or 2. It was actually made in 2006, the last time the compensation was changed for this body. And the current annual salaries right now are the mayor at $10,272.96, and each city commissioner at $6,056.04. The salary adjustment contemplated by this proposed budget would be to provide an annual salary of $15,409.44 for the mayor, and an annual salary of $9,084.06 for each commissioner. So this amount is included in this proposed budget. I should note that under law, this ability to make changes in compensation is highly regulated by state law, and you can only consider doing so or actually make it during an election year and have it take effect for the body that follows you at the next term. So this is the opportunity, if you choose to do that, and you could make it for the commission and the mayor, all of who will be beginning new terms January 1, 2019. That would be the first time this would be changed, if approved. And we have a separate ordinance tonight if you wish to do so. I would say, just as a footnote, and we'll have discussion on this later, but those numbers came about largely, in fact, they do reflect the numbers obtained from the Kentucky League of Cities compensation study of elected officials and staff throughout the state in 2017. And those numbers I mentioned for the commissioners represent the 75 percentile, meaning that in the population group that the city that we are in, 25% of the respondents were paid a higher level and 75% were paid this or lower amount. The mayor's salary was simply arrived at by maintaining the same spread as currently exists. And so that's where those numbers came from. It was a statewide summary, survey. Okay, moving on to Finance and Administration, page 5. We have, again, a line item called Consultants and Commission Fees, and it's budgeted at $214,890. It's got the footnote 1 there on page 5. This is for the fees that Danville pays Boyle County for collection of our taxes and fees, our occupational license or property taxes and so forth. No changes are recommended in the next fiscal year to this arrangement. And that's really about, I'm just noting that as a expense. We slightly increased our part-time wages next year in this department because of anticipated maternity leave of one of the employees, but essentially same as now. Information technology, page 6. I'm going to have to pick it up here, or we will be having a late night. Think of information and technology needs of the city. I mean, we do a 911 center. We have a highly automated police department in terms of our communications and our computers and so forth. We've got water regionally now that have SCADA systems that measure output and leak detection and communicate. And we have a lot of internal customers with City Hall, our accounting, and this is all to say that this is recommended for an additional change of adding 1 technician that would be an hourly employee, and also moving our current manager up to the status of a director of the department. We need to have, if there's anything that needs coordinating, it's the IT communications linkages, because you can't have different departments doing different things. And for efficiency and coordination and success, we need to have a director there who's got the capability to plan and direct and to coordinate and to integrate all of these various systems, and to get more away from being the technician that installs equipment, which has been kind of the case even through our current effort to upgrade our 911 center. We're just understaffed in that department. We've got some very talented people, and I want to keep those and continue with that success. So that's the short phrase of that. Police Department, page 7. We're continuing our present staffing of 35 officers and 2 assistants. Our overtime, as noted on page 7, if you go to the top there, overtime budget is up a little bit over prior years. It really was because of our staffing shortages and the need to work existing officers a bit more. That should correct as we get fully staffed. We have had to consider, and in fact maybe a time or two, overhire technically in order to get people in the pipeline to get into the long-delayed entry into the Department of Criminal Justice Training, which is brought about by really shortages of funding from the state and staffing at that level, and that has not, to my knowledge, improved. So there's very long delay in getting folks in and through that process. But again, there are no significant changes there. We may have broken out just one item a little bit differently in terms of our range costs for firearms trainings, and maybe our ammo gun costs there are $15,000, but really no significant change in that department. I did note in my memo on the next page that I think maybe you all are aware, and our community is aware, that one of the things Governor Bevin did was to start an angel program of the state police, wherein the people who may have drug addictions can surrender there and seek treatment. And previously, maybe 1 or 2 cities in Kentucky had implemented that locally. It's a great thing that the state police are doing that, and we might be called upon to assist in that in some way if that becomes successful statewide. I mean, locally with our people, the big challenge still is to have the availability of treatment centers and beds to deal with that issue. Let's talk about fire and emergency services on page 8. We're continuing full funding of our current 25 full-time firefighters and 1 administrative assistant. This budget is departing from past traditions in that we're recognizing going ahead that we're going to have to begin paying pension contributions on part-time firefighters. The law requires that those pension contributions be paid if you work in more than one location, and you can get around it by not hiring those that got the experience to work in multiple locations, but you're not getting the best qualified candidates. And so for the small amount of pension contribution that we'll be making on part-time wages, we're going to plan to do that to attract quality part-time firefighters, and those often step up in our own recruitment process to become our next full-time firefighters. So that is a difference. And I've noted under footnote 3 on my memo that we will receive, and I've mentioned this before, our new hook and ladder truck before June 30th this year, and it's going to fully equipped cost us $1.5 million, and we're planning to construct a new fire station to replace our obsolete fire station on Main Street. We're going to talk about that in the capital budget section. So moving on, again, there's no significant change other than those items I've noted. Page 9, we've already talked about our transfer of funds from the county on the 911 funds, and we're operating that now under a service agreement to provide service to Boyle County and to the 2 other cities in Boyle County. We've been providing medical dispatch services since, I think, Valentine's Day, February of this year. Our handicap and difficulty in providing that additional, service was that we have to have medical dispatch training and equipment that we did buy, and have those fully trained and certified. And so currently, we've been able to provide that through part-time employees, where we've got 12 employees, and we're recommending the hiring of 1 additional full-time dispatcher. We will continue then to have some part-time dispatching services if we can continue to attract them to make that division function. Code enforcement, page 10. There is continued funding under footnote 1 for the part-time staff, support staff, to support Architectural Heritage Board's activities. We have the agreement with our Heart of Danville and Main Street to provide certain services to the state, which is in part here, but we are providing that to our own committee, Architectural Heritage Board. And I think given the work that she has done in the past year, she has proved that she's a quite valuable asset for that small amount of money. We've continued in the code enforcement budget for next year, $90,000 allocated for the demolition of blight and/or legal costs necessary to deal with foreclosures and recovery of our liens. So there's no change in the existing staffing in that department. On page 11, public services, we do recommend adding 1 new public works employee. We currently have a vacancy in the position of public works director. We fund that public works director through a sharing arrangement with stormwater funds. We need to fill that position and have it supervised by our to-be-hired city engineer once we work out that position and make that transfer. So in public services, there's 1 new position. I would note, and I have noted in my written summary, that we're continued to fund, again, $125,000 of extra funds for continued construction of sidewalks. Community agencies on page 12. Our Senior Citizen Center is fully funded as requested at the $66,500. This budget proposes to continue the present level of support for economic development funding of $145,000 in total for the next fiscal year, but to rebalance that funding by allocating basically 50% to both the Heart of Danville and to the Economic Development Partnership. The Boyle County Airport is fully funded at the requested 115, I'm sorry, not 115, but 15,000. The remaining other community agencies are recommended to be funded at 1/2 of the funds they received last year if they again requested funding this year. Parks and Recreation, again, a joint city-county agency, is allocated $240,000, which is a $2,000 increase. The city also provides substantial in-kind services, and we, of course, currently pay our water and sewer fees, which we're hoping to enter into a discussion with the county to get a recovery or cost sharing on that rather large expense in the next year. We've also had discussions that have been very productive the past year and this year going forward with making capital improvements in our Millennium Park, and we've made quite a few of those already. And this budget, as we discussed in the last ad hoc Parks and Recreation Committee, does contemplating a total city-county funding of $100,000 to further make improvements in Millennium Park, which would mean, of course, $50,000 to us. And those areas are listed in terms of shade areas for playground, the softball bleacher area. $40,000, complete the fencing at the volleyball pit. $10,000, repaving our softball parking lot. $35,000, and address baseball water drainage problems as they currently exist. $15,000. We lowered our city contribution to our closed police fire pension fund to $135,000 in the next year. And there are various other transfers where we support our various other funds that don't have revenue sufficient, and that's where these are made, as you are well aware. There's nothing really outstanding in any of those. It's what we've done for quite a number of years. Let's go, if we will, to general fund debt service on page 14. With the completion of our water treatment plant and those loans now coming due, we do have a rather large loan to interest to pay. I'm sorry, this is still the general fund. I'm thinking ahead of the utility. But even in the general fund, we have on page 14, $1,485,857,001 for debt service for the next year. Those include our fleet vehicle lease arrangement. And again, we entered into that after a demonstration that we would save considerable amounts of money over the time by doing that. Our energy saving improvements, again, some $40,934.88 in terms of a debt payment. Again, are programs that are designed to save us money over the long haul, but we do have to make those periodic debt payments on that. Let's look at our capital expenditures and minor funds on page 15. There's a lot in this category, and I know at least one person in the audience is highly interested in trail improvements. Public services, for parks, we've allocated $358,600 for the next fiscal year for parks. And that large number, or combined number of $358,600, is to complete the Henson Trail. That's $88,600. To erect the gazebo in Millennium Park at a cost of $25,000. To install a small neighborhood playground in the Henson Park area. There's a large group of folks down there that are really, they have no place to easily get to, and that was a outcome of our discussion with the Master Park Planning's preliminary study, and so we're going to contemplate that as being something we do in the next year. Complete the spiral water splash pad at the water treatment plant park. That's a $100,000 cost, with $50,000 of that being funded by stormwater funds and $50,000 being funded by Public Works. And in an additional $120,000 would be used to construct the mountain bike park and trail. we're anticipating getting $100,000 in grant funds to help complete that project. I think we're at the point where if you flip in your binder, the other general fund accounts really are best viewed with greater detail in our capital forecast. So if you can flip to that, it's tabbed, I think, in your binder. Let's go to that 10-year capital forecast. You will see our total, for example, 2018, 2019 projected total being $19,733,823. And let's break that down in terms of what that consists of. The police department, this next fiscal year, $175,000. That's for video cameras, $35,000. There's the need for building repairs in their back entryway in the kitchen there. They've got tile, unlike it's a linoleum rather than the tile that we have through much of the other building, and their walls are having wear from excessive traffic there. So that's to basically make an improvement. And there's some various vehicle equipment in the amount of $30,000. The fire department listed at $10,076,000. That's a big error. We're contemplating out of that total $9.5 million for the fire station and related expenses, as I've mentioned several times. A total of $400,000 is allocated to replace fighters, existing turnout gear and coats. And also in the fire department is a significant need to move somewhat the existing main communication tower that is there, and that's going to cost $125,000 to move. You cannot construct a new building on that site at its present location. It needs to be moved for a variety of reasons, so that's a necessary, and that's the cheapest alternative, I would say, without going into great detail on that either. To move it slightly on its present site. If you get into moving to an alternate site, it's going to probably triple that cost due to licensing requirements and so forth. Communications, really no capital expenditures projected for the next fiscal year, just completion of our equipment upgrades for the 911 center for the $434,500. Public Works, that total number of $1,198,600 consists of completion of the Public Works garage at $640,000. That's planned as we've gotten through our other major construction of the water treatment plant and other projects. We have, and again, we can go back in all the detail here individually by department. I'm still working off the summary page, but each department, if you go through about 4 in, you'll see the Public Works 10-year capital forecast. So you've got skid loader of $30,000, you've got a street sweeper of $150,000, tiller $20,000, the improvements to the facility itself $640,000, and trails $208,600, and another $125,000 also for another trail, as we talked about earlier, basically. The other general fund, the next page to back, I believe, is a copier for general administrative use. The big item there is the server replacement and the upgrade in software for all our data and systems here at City Hall for water utility and other purposes. We have $50,000 for implementation of the wayfinding, which will be a start but not a completion. You see we've Also contemplating another $50,000 in the next year, but just this first year, $50,000. Stormwater is the next page, and that totals $577,000. That's for a number of small projects, really. And part of it is for support of our educational park, $50,000 at the water treatment plant, and a couple of construction of stormwater drainage improvements. Cemetery is the final page. We did acquire land adjacent to Bellevue. We've talked about the need to do a variety of things there. We're not certain exactly what all those will be or could be, but we've allocated $25,000 in the next year to begin to make some of the upgrades to the cemeteries, as well as possibly that land we acquired, as well as to install cameras for security purposes at our cemetery to prevent vandalism or other activities. Let's then go, perhaps, as we're about an hour or more in here at the present time, let's talk about our municipal aid, road aid fund, pages 16 through 17 of the budget itself, if you go back to the budget. Actually, the details on page 17, but we're basically continuing to transfer funds from the general fund to this municipal road aid fund in order to take advantage of the remaining time that we can participate in the state price contract to buy asphalt. It's going to be more expensive after the 1st of July. So we're transferring $100,000 to a new total of $600,000 to do more while we still can do that at a lower cost. And we plan to keep in future years the same level that we are making $500,000 to do paving in our city. And also, our 2nd Street Bridge is funded in this budget, the bridge replacement. It's $135,000 in the current fiscal year ending June 30th and $65,000 budgeted next year to complete that bridge, which has been deemed to be insufficient to carry heavy vehicles. There's a number of minor funds that I'll just let you look at your convenience. There's no significant changes to any of those. Some have no activity whatever. If you go to pages 24 and pages 25 in the budget, we do have budgeted for streetscape improvements to be made from 5th to 4th Street. I sometimes wondered if I would ever see that done. But I believe it will be done this summer. It's contemplated to be done in the budget for $250,000. We have budgeted in next year's budget the potential of receiving that $900,000 grant on streetscape from the state. We don't know if we'll get it or not, of course, but if we don't, we contemplate a general fund transfer of $384,265 to make curbing and other safety improvements at the intersection of Main and 3rd Streets. So we're going to be working on Main Street in the next fiscal year. Our cemetery operations, page 26 and 27, I'll just hit these real quickly. We've increased our budget for landscaping and flower from 5 to 10, landscaping and materials increased from 6 to 12. I mentioned the capital expenditure already for security cameras and upgrades to our land that we recently acquired, and also continuing what we've done this past year, we've added additional funds to pave in the cemeteries of $20,000. So they're getting greater attention. Stormwater operations, no proposed increase in fees, and there's minor engineering in a couple of projects. Our parking fund on pages 45 and 46, and that's towards the back of your book, it continues to be supplemented with general fund transfers. Our revenues have been consistent but not growing in the parking fund operations. We will complete our energy efficiency project this next fiscal year. I think for that energy efficiency project, we've got $221,689 this fiscal year and $11,779 to complete the work there the next fiscal year. I would say on the operation of that parking garage, it again is a key component to the success of our hospital and surgery center downtown and for business in general to support the downtown. It doesn't make a profit necessarily for the city. In fact, it costs us to do that, but it does generate business, and we benefit from occupational license tax gains from that. Having said all of that, we're going to be looking and have been, and we've looked once before and we're in the process of looking now to see if it would be more cost effective to have a third-party manager of that parking garage that specializes in parking management rather than the city do that, and that will be an item of discussion coming up at some point. Okay, so I think that concludes really the highlights of our proposed general fund budget. Again, the numbers and the programs mentioned, 6 new employees recommended in the general fund. Again, a utility engineer, an administrative analyst in the utility, human resources director, IT technician, a 911 dispatcher, and a public works employee. So I think we can get through the utility fund budget here pretty quickly. Not to rush it, but it's, let's go to page 32, if you will. Page 32 of our utility fund summary. We also have, like the general fund, a declining fund balance in the utility funds, and that's largely due to our use of borrowed funds, and we have spent those to do the projects, and so our funds are declining. If you look at the very bottom line on that, you can see, though, that from the earlier years of some in 14-15, that fiscal year, where we had $24.5 million, the next year $8.3 million, the next year $3.5 million, estimated this year $5 million, and we're getting down to a little over $500,000, $624,416,000. We're getting close to the bone there in terms of being able to withstand adverse developments. And this is a significantly close fund balance, and it would be very desirable to have some additional cushion in there, because if we get so close that we cannot meet our bond covenants, that's going to be costly to the city for future improvements that we've talked about and bring about other unpleasant and things we want to avoid. So I just point that out to you as we begin this budget. Speaking of revenue, on the following page, we are not projecting a large increase in service revenue, but quite the contrary, just a modest increase in revenue for the next year. I think the total revenue from all sources may be in about $75,000 or $80,000. Again, in the scope of operations we're talking about, that is very, very modest. Midway down the page, you will see that $6,065,000 figure, and that we will be borrowing that amount of money to cover most of our capital improvements that we are anticipating. That will be a bond issue, part of the bond issue that we are contemplating. And we did receive an EDA grant to make a number of improvements. And let's flip to the page 34. This is our operations. The first footnote there, again, is the recognition that we need to add one additional employee for the operations of the water treatment plant. It takes several years for an employee to become trained and certified at the various levels required to meet the state's certification, Class 4. So we need to recruit and train to have proper staff to operate our new modern facility. You'll note about midway down, our electric costs continue to go up. We're paying close to $500,000 for electric cost for the water treatment plant. That's expected to be $483,000 for our pumps and so forth that we use there. It's a significant cost. Our chemicals, further down, you'll see for treating water, and most people, and myself included, couldn't contemplate that you spend $600,000 plus for chemicals to treat the water out there, but that's what it is costing us. You'll note that that amount, while high, is actually lower than the actual cost in some prior years. So our improved filtration technology and the way we apply chemicals is bringing about some savings, and we continue to seek the best pricing in chemicals through our reverse auction process and so forth. It's just that we use those and they are expensive. Let's turn to the next page, our water distribution page. We're continuing to upgrade our water meters for efficiency and to save labor cost in terms of reading those. We've got, towards the bottom of your page, $105,000 there for our water line improvements and fire hydrants. We replace a number of fire hydrants in both the city of Danville and Perryville. They're expensive to do, but we're trying to continue to upgrade those as we can afford to do that. Our entire energy efficiency work that we are underway in buildings and water lines and so forth should conclude November, mid-November, or certainly before the end of this year. But until then, we're going to continue to be completing all of that work, which in future years will save us money and is guaranteed to save us money. On page 36, our next challenge is our wastewater treatment plant. In our capital budget, it is budgeted for improvement. It's been almost 20 years since we've last made improvements to the sewer plant, and it's in need of a major upgrade. You'll see about halfway down in the sewer treatment plant, it cost us $368,500 for electric annually. That's a significant portion of the budget. Part of that is the cost of the UV lighting system for disinfecting the effluent there, and that's not part of the energy efficiency upgrade. We're going to not be upgrading something that we're going to be renovating anyway, so that will be part of the capital study and upgrade to come in a future project. On page 37, The difficulty, and Earl could speak to this a lot better than I can, but, you know, when you have a pump go out and you've got a maintainer to replace it, the costs go up very quickly and very high, and those fluctuating repair costs have been the difficulty of managing the utility budget, and that's why that thin margin of fund balance is so disturbing, because you could have one or two events occur and you would be in the red pretty quickly. So the other thing I would note is that we have budgeted for the upgrade of the Spears Creek lift station in the capital budget, and we will be required to borrow funds to actually make that occur. Okay, I think I'm about through this, except for, let's look on page 40, maybe, or page 41. Well, look at page 40, the non-departmental summary page, if you will. The 220 reflects salary and benefit changes for staff that we've talked about moving from general fund to the utility fund. The inter-fund charge further down of $1,050,844.04 is what is transferred to the city for our efforts in terms of managing that operation. That's what is transferred. And so I think that's all I really wanted to cover on that page. And on page 41, this is our debt page, and this bears looking at just a bit. You'll see almost all the way down at the bottom of the page, the debt service USDA 2016 water treatment plant. That estimated amount that we will pay through June 30th is $556,750. The amount in the next fiscal year for debt on the water new treatment plant is $558,061.29. The numbers below that for the fleet and energy efficiency, again, those are saving us money, but our interest cost on that are $199,000 plus and $275,000 plus. So these are just the variety of debt that we have to pay in the next fiscal year, and it totals $2,878,789.30. In recent years, we've made a number of significant improvements, but it does cost money to do that. And I know this is no news to you, but we improved our bond rating a number of years back. That allowed us to issue debt at a lower cost. We refinanced prior debt multiple times and saved money in doing that, but it's difficult or near impossible to make improvements unless you issue debt to do that. And this is just a necessary part of those improvements, and it can be viewed as spreading those costs out over a generation or 30 years typically, rather than incurring them in a shorter period of time. And finally, on page 42, our utility capital expenditures. As I think I've mentioned a time or two, the capital budget will have to be paid with either grant funds we receive, and we've received some of those for the water line improvements around the industrial foundation land area, or with borrowed funds. And some of the capital needs are corporate drive upgrades, $2,400,000. We've a grant loan for that. That's a significant benefit, and we're in process on that. storage tank repainting and improvements, $540,000. We will need to borrow some or all of that money to make that improvement. Beginning sewer plant upgrades. Now, this is in future year, but that's going to cost us $1.5 million to begin to make those improvements. Our lift station and pump upgrades, another $1 million. And finishing our energy efficiency project, $1,312,836. So to attempt to summarize a very complex series of challenges, in this next fiscal year, we contemplate 2 bond issues, one for our fire department and related expenses to occur probably in July or August, as soon as we can get ahead of the rising interest cost to make those improvements. And sometime in the next calendar year, after January 1, 2019, will be a subsequent bond issue to deal with a lot of these utility capital improvements that are necessary. And if we really have no choice but to make them, if we do not, we will face excessive or very huge fines for failure to comply with regulations. And it's been almost 20 years since we've upgraded it. From a capacity point of view, we need to do it as a good business practice anyway to continue to have the type of sewer treatment facility that will attract industry and be able to protect our watershed that we use as our drinking source. So that is an overview of our budget for the next year. There's a lot to contemplate that is really great about that, a lot of work to be done. And again, I'm very appreciative of the City Commission for your retreat discussion and direction for each of the staff and department heads in putting this together. And it has been more difficult this year given the uncertainty of the pension contributions, which, finally has been resolved. So with that, I thank you. And if we want to go into questions now, or if you just simply want to contemplate this and come back another day, whichever.
I don't know, would y'all want to hear it again, just to be sure? Now, thank you for the presentation. And I think, personally, it's like drinking water out of a fire hose. I'm going to take a little time to absorb all this. I'm not sure what I'd ask you right now. I would ask, you mentioned the utility fund balance being very thin.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like you said you had a path forward, but I missed that. So was that
Well,
another rate study?
The necessary path forward, we have a rate study underway for sewer rate, and that will be something to be considered by the City Commission probably in the summer.
I was afraid you'd say that.
Ron, I want to thank you for the forethought of taking care of something that has kept me up for many times over the last 3 years, and that's added critical staff. I've said to a lot of people over the last few years, the city operates on a handful of people, and we all are but a heartbeat away. And if any one of those 5 people were to exit prematurely, it would have significant effects. So I thank you for looking that in the eye and staring it down. We need to solve that.
On that point, and I failed to cover this, but there is an organizational chart or charts in the back of this. Maybe you've had a chance to look at that already, but it demonstrates the breadth of services that are provided and under supervision of which staff, and that's useful, I think, in just contemplating
If I might
how we
suggest,
effectively manage.
these charts might be beneficial in your next newsletter.
Could be, sure.
Because I don't think the general public grasps the breadth and depth and complexity of City Hall. And it is significant.
It's a big business.
It's a big business. A lot of moving parts.
I think you're right, Mayor. He is addressing some things, and we certainly, as we strive to take care of our potholes and clean up our parks, you put a lot of burden on just a few people, and so we've requested this. I did have a couple questions, but I think that I think you did a great job here. As I go through the chart, I can kind of see it falling in place. Right now, we have 2 administrative assistants to the city clerk, but it appears as though we'll be able to break one of those off for the new Human Resources Director, is what I see here.
There are no changes currently contemplated to the administrative support staff. I mean, currently, the Human Resources Director, City Clerk, directly supervises those 2 individuals. It's contemplated that one would be dedicated to that service, but we're in a small office and a small team. If we need to pitch in or whatever, we would, but it's contemplated that Human Resources would have support for the magnitude of work that needs to be done through one dedicated person. The other person is the administrative assistant to the mayor and the city manager, although currently supervised directly by the City Clerk, Human Resources Director. So no changing in support, but it would be one recognition that that office needs support at least by one person. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, it did. You know, I was going to ask kind of how they fell into place currently, but I think we've figured that out. I'm going to agree with Commissioner Caudell. There's some stuff to digest, and I think we all have to digest it. But I was taking a few notes, and maybe you can just help me, so I'll have some help digesting it. The cemetery fund, we had a lot of increases to landscaping and flowers, almost 100%. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit? That represents about $11,000 from what I see.
It does. I might ask Michelle to help me on that detail, which I'm not sure I can.
For several years, the beautification committee has asked us, and the cemetery committee has asked us to step up, and we've had to do a lot of extra work, and we're going to have to do an extra lot of work for trees and for new areas, and every time that we open up kind of a new area, that there needs to be something done, and then plus, you know, maintaining all the old stuff too. That was lowered several years ago, and now they've asked us, now that, you know, the economy's a little bit better than it was in 2008, that we go back to doing that in the cemetery. And a lot of that goes to tree maintenance in the cemetery, because those branches have to be cut, and when we have a heavy snow like we did this last time, we really bear that.
Okay.
Are we ready to move to item 3?
Not yet, no. I
Okay.
just want to just make some comments. The charts, I think, Ron, need to be posted someplace, because they really show how things flow in the city. But as I look at, like, you have 10 employees under one person, and you have 6 employees under somebody else, and then looking at what I think they're responsible for, you find out that there are very, very few employees who have a lot of responsibility.
It's very true.
And I'm sure they're doing the work of more than just one person, and so that's great to have you call that to our attention. And then, I'm like the mayor, to think about us increasing staff by 6 people across all departments. You know, that's really not a very big number, and I don't know if we've increased staffing over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years that I can recall. So
Police department primarily, one or two incrementally, and that's about it, I think.
Yeah. we've
Yeah.
been
I don't think there's
concentrating on
been, outside of that, when was the last time you had a change?
We
Not
added,
since I've been here.
We added codes last year.
Had
2 years
what?
ago.
we added one to
Codes.
codes last year, and then we added one to,
I'm talking about, the true operational, responsible.
we added one to Public Works that was actually, we had got rid of during the recession. So we added it back, and now we're adding another one back, so.
But you're talking
But I'm
about
talking
like
about
director or
what you would
department
call
head?
senior management.
Yeah.
We haven't had any changes in that area.
And yet, the responsibility's gotten bigger and certainly more complex.
Well, the only way that we've been able to deal with it in some cases is to contract for some aspects of that to be done by engineering firms or others, because we simply don't have the bandwidth to do it, and that has been an increased cost.
And to think about getting Mr. Coffey,
Yeah.
some really qualified, that's a good word to use, but it makes, not reflecting on anyone else, but to have someone certified to assist and back him up and just give him another opinion, to me, is going to be very valuable as we move forward with some of the things that we know are coming, we think are coming down the road. So, again, that's very positive, I think.
Well, I agree. I think a
Well,
few years ago, we knew that between stormwater utility and becoming a regional water provider, that was gonna kind of have to become its own thing and have its own engineer, so it's that time. Now you can loaf.
He might just have enough time to catch his breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I want to say is that we're planning all of this with no increase, that bad word.
No tax increases
Yeah.
are contemplated or planned in this budget.
But think of where we would be if we hadn't
Yeah,
taken that
understand.
charge.
And remember, I was
Yeah.
opposed to it and wanted a lower amount, but you guys were much smarter and wiser than I was at the time. Oh, wait, did I just say that? Oh, okay. And you went ahead and approved it, so I do appreciate that. Yeah.
Hopefully with added activity on the economic development front. So some of our revenue issues here will be solved temporarily. Got to keep growing.
What should be gratifying to the public is what you've addressed in here is a lot of things that have come out of some of the studies that we've asked for, and that's increased maintenance for trails and certainly sidewalks, and we've talked about that a lot. And so it's time to put our money where our mouth is, I guess, and so I was happy to see that
Ron,
coming through.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Somebody else? Ron, with the road fund, what is the future of the road fund, and how's that going to impact us?
The future of the road fund is uncertain until the General Assembly is willing to address raising the gasoline tax. And then it's been done in other states, and it might occur during a special called session to address revenue needs of the state. It starts there. Until then, we are limited in our ability to pave roads, fix sidewalks, do all those things. We do what we can. We've done more in the last couple of years than we've done before. But there's both the issue of the gas tax, whether that should or could be raised, to what level, and when it triggers in. And then there's the secondary issue that has been discussed this past session, maybe the prior session too, in terms of whether it's long overdue to look at the 1940s formula for the distribution of those road funds between city and county, because the current and antiquated formula, if I can say that, doesn't really recognize counties that have great urban growth either. I mean, great road needs. The more urbanized and developing counties, they don't get the benefit of growth in that area where they need anyway. So it's an obsolete formula, and there was a lot of discussion this time, and I'm not prepared to go into the technicalities of that, but they were talking about keeping the current formula in place until so much money was generated, a floor basically where things would happen. Then as the gas tax, if they raised it, kicked in, then they would have a secondary distribution. But all of that is yet to be determined, and
I can see that becoming a major issue for us down the road. We've got, you all know how many linear miles of asphalt we've got in this community, and should the majority of it come into disrepair because we don't have enough money to keep it up, that's just going to be a large problem.
well, what's of added concern, and I mentioned it tonight, and I don't know really the rationale for it, but maybe Earl does, but the taking asphalt off the state price contract after June 30th and no longer being able to benefit from state
What's
pricing.
up with that, Earl? Makes no sense.
That will increase costs across the state. And, I don't know.
Somebody's getting some money somewhere.
KLC is making a big push right now in the special session for them to put a bill in to perfect that will redistribute how it's been given to the county and cities that Ron was talking about. So the KLC is actually pushing that very hard right now so that the cities obtain more of the money, because right now we get the lower end of the deal.
Michelle, on the interfund charge, that's set by the state too, isn't it?
No, it is not. That's a formula that we have put in place, and it may be adjusted in the near future according to how the chart goes, but it will be adjusted a great deal because the utility fund, especially in these lean years that they've had, has benefited a lot by being attached to the city. And right now, we borrow all our money on the city rate, not the utility fund, not the revenue bonds. We do general fund bonds for the utility fund instead of revenue bonds because we generate a much better rate.
Well, I wonder if
Better
that
rate.
wasn't another formula that needed some
It will get in the near future, if this hierarchy like Ron has set up continues, it'll get adjusted and tweaked a little bit, but not a lot. For example, it helps repay all the administrative stuff that City Hall does, the finance does, for example. And like I said, it benefits greatly for being with, when you're talking about we would be way over $3 million a year instead of $2 million right now if we wouldn't be able to get the rate on the general fund rate. So, I mean, it's kind of helps pay back, the goodwill too and administrative costs,
Yeah.
that happen.
So that's our internal formula. for
It's our
figuring that.
internal formula because we share expenses, which ends up benefiting both.
When we did the water rate study too, we looked at, that was evaluated and then confirmed through that study that the approach that finance had taken for a while, that was reconfirmed then.
I guess the final question is that, I don't want anything to happen, but if you're concerned about the balance, are you saying that one or two major unexpected expenditures would put us?
We're close to the edge, and that closer than we want to be. I'll just leave it at that.
So what's our answer out of that problem?
We've made the first step of getting out of it. We're starting we've done our efficiency. That's going to help. We just do not know how much that's going to help in the future until we get all the meters set. And so after we reevaluate next year, it could be a lot more than what we think, or less. We have to get the meters in the ground first, and that won't be until November, halfway through the next fiscal year until we get all the meters in the ground. And you all did do the rate studies, and we did increase the rates of the sewer, which we're seeing the effects of that already, and it has really helped in these last 2 years of doing that also. We keep on trying to save money anywhere we can. We refinanced 2 or 3 of the loans in the utility fund so far. We've been looking at the rest of the loans. The problem is when they're attached to grants at the very beginning, it's hard to refinance those. They're harder to refinance because of loan covenants and loan agreements that we made because we wanted the grant funds at that time. So we continue to look at things like that and trying to save money anywhere we can. Every penny's pinched.
And that's great, but that's all on the cost-saving side. You can only do that one time. I think the real answer going forward is further economic development. That's our big lever here, to make sure that we can operate with the margins that we need.
No restaurant tax, right? Hate to bring that one up, boy, that's.
Not up to us, that's up to the legislature.
I know, but I just, every time I go someplace and I eat out, I take time to look at my receipt now. Just a $25 meal for 2, that's changes the price real quick. Yeah.
Anything else on this subject?
Thanks, staff.
Thanks, staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I might say that I think that you did a good job of helping out Parks and Rec by keeping them at the same money with a little bit of an increase. But as we have addressed our needs here with assistant engineers and so forth, at some point down the road, do you see anything, and I haven't yet, with the consultant, that we do something better for Parks and Rec? Right now, Parks and Rec in our city is kind of a Millennium Park, and the city takes care of the rest of the parks. And so it almost seems to me if they were funded better and they had help, they could take care of all the trails and so forth. But I guess that won't happen until both the governments decide to work better together on the whole system, or?
Well, I think we'll get the benefit of that master park study within a couple of months, And as we begin the next fiscal year, I think the city and the county will begin a new level of discourse and discussion about what is in that study, what the recommendations might be, and what the staffing and financing of that might be. There's already been the report at one of the meetings, and I'm not sure if you were there or not, but the general conclusion was that neither city nor county are putting the appropriate level of support into the system. But it's not just how much do you put into the system, it's what do you do, how do you do it, what are your goals, and all of that. So
Sure.
We're starting kind of at the beginning, I think, of a comprehensive discussion, being open-minded about whatever combination of adjustments might be necessary to bring about the desired improvements or desired outcomes.
Yeah. And I thank you for answering that. I just wanted to bring up the point that I think that we're supporting Parks and Rec to the level that we should at this point, plus the ad hoc committee from both Fiscal Court and this city commission are kicking in at close to $50,000. So it's a lot of money that we're putting at it, and I don't want that community to feel like they're not being looked at hard. It's just that we haven't figured it out yet, and that was kind of the answer I was trying to get from you.
That is the answer, but I think you're mindful, and I think we all should be mindful that when we think of Parks and Recreation, we should think more broadly than just Millennium Park. And that's what the whole effort of this
Thank
study
you.
is, because there's so many people who don't go to Millennium Park and want Park and Recreation services or different things to do in different ways. And so this is an attempt to look to the future and to meet the broad set of needs, not just in what we have done in the past and funding it differently or better.
But doesn't that require the change in attitude from the Parks and Rec Committee? Parks and Rec Board?
Well, I think it could, but I think that we also have to be supportive, and I guess I'm bringing up the point that we are, to this point, very supportive. It's difficult, I would think, if I were in that position, to run a total Parks and Rec program if most of the focus financially is put on Millennium Park. from the other side of the house, if you would.
It would require a change in philosophy from our partner.
Anyway, I didn't want to really do too much focus, and I thought about it, but I did want to make the point that I already made, is that we are supporting them as much as we can at this point until we know what we're going to go do down the road. It's kind of similar to, we probably need an assistant engineer for a while.
Long
But we
time.
just had to figure it out.
Well,
Well, we had
bottom
one.
line,
We
you've
had one
got
for a
the
while,
added revenues that allows that to happen. It's all about the revenues. If nothing else, I'll go to item 3, and I'd like to follow Robert's Rules of Order on this, and so I will begin. I'd like to make the motion that we amend ordinance number 1913 as per the recommendation of the city manager. And I make this motion because this commission has undertaken the unpleasant task of bringing up to date the city's various sources of revenue in order to meet present needs as well as position the city for the future. This commission has chosen to face the facts and not, quote, kick the can down the road, close quote. As Mr. Scott made you aware, when compared with surrounding cities and counties, we are near the lowest paid currently. Yet, we are the largest, and without a doubt, we are the most complex. It takes money to run for office. This is not often thought of by the public, but it does take money. And I personally paid well into 5 figures in my election, and I did so because I believed in being a part of leadership in this city, and believe we needed to make some difficult decisions and promote some changes. And I'm very proud of what this commission has done. I'm very proud of our staff and what our staff has done. But it does take finances to get here, and none of us are truly paid based on the time spent, and it's considerable, to study the issues and challenges of the city. We are here because we believe in our community. And while no one on the present commission serves for the money without a modest increase, I personally fear that the only people who will be able to afford to serve in these seats will be those who are well established financially, or those who are retired and have time to spare. This present commission is a well-balanced and diverse group composed of male and female, represented very nicely by small businesses, and even we have the retired perspective. This type of balance is critical, and one of the principal reasons, in my opinion, that this particular commission has been willing to make the hard choices and the hard decisions. That's my motion. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
We are in discussion. By the way, this is first reading. Any further comments? Seeing none.
I think they're
Just make sure that, because our council isn't here,
Yes.
you're saying first reading, are you referencing an ordinance number, or are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, ordinance number 1913. I thought I did that at the
You did.
beginning.
Maybe you did, I just want to make sure.
Can we have those numbers again? Please.
Yes.
It's not filled in on here.
The current commission makes $6,056.04 a year. The current mayor makes $10,272.96 a year. With the increase, it will bring the commission up to $9,084.06, and the mayor up to $15,409.44.
And if I am reading this correctly from the sample ordinance that you have provided, sample ordinance number 1913, this is from 1974? Is that correct? Is that how I read this?
1994.
1994.
Yes, sir.
Where commissioners received $4,450, which is about, it's only about 50% higher now in 23 years. So I think it's due. And there's a lot of commissions to come after us, and they're going to face similar, if not more difficult challenges than we face. And you need to have talent. Any further discussions?
Well, I think your points are well made, and yeah, I'd like to get it started. I would not want to go to a vote unless I heard from every city commissioner. We've already heard from you, of course, the mayor, the other three, and on their points of view. You know, the first thing that strikes me here is that you're making a very good point. It's been a while, and as we've slowly increased the salaries of city staff, you know, by 1% and 2%. Folks up here have just gone on and done their thing, which has been admirable, but at some point it probably should be looked at. But similar to when we had to deal with the stormwater, it's a kind of a big gulp. We should have been taking steps, and I kind of hate that. So that's where I sit. You know, when I first heard this would be on the agenda, I thought about baby steps, but I'm willing to listen to the other three commissioners and see what they feel about it. And I think that maybe some of you all have done some research. I'd like to hear that research.
Research about what other commissions are being paid?
I'm sorry?
You're talking about research about what other commissions?
What the surrounding cities, similar in size to us, are being paid at this position. We already know from the newspaper article of last night that just across the street, the magistrates are getting paid $8,377, and I certainly think we do as much work as they do. So that's something to go on.
Mr. Atkins, why don't you share?
Well, I can share some of these numbers. I just pray that they're correct and accurate. The mayor for the city of Harrisburg, these are all part-time positions just like ours, is paid $25,400. Can you hear me, Ben? The mayor from Harrisburg is paid $25,400. The commissioners are paid $16,900. Mercer County, their court members are paid $6,900 plus $2,400 expense account, $200 a month automatic, where the clerk talked about it. Washington County, $6,600 plus a $3,600 automatic $300 expense account per month. No paperwork required. The mayor of Springfield is $12,000 plus a $3,000 expense, and the commissioners in Springfield, $3,000 plus a $3,000 expense account. Lincoln County, the commissioners are paid $12,000 plus $3,000 plus a $3,600 expense allotment, and then they receive $900 to $3,600 training reimbursement based on whether they've been on the court for 1 year all the way to 4 years. So that's just a few folks in this surrounding area. I called the clerk's offices today and asked if they were willing to share what that with me. And also, all of them also have health benefits attached to those salaries as well. Can I give them all?
So,
Oh, wait, and one more. The mayor of Stanford receives $30,000 a year. The commissioners receive $1,800 a year.
Wow.
That'll start a discussion.
well, I just,
No, you can't have that.
I wasn't gonna share those publicly, but I'm just, you know something's gonna be discussed, it's best to have something to base your thoughts on. And my thought about seconding it was to allow us to have this discussion. You know, I'm always that guy that says, well, okay, put it out there, and then we'll hear from some of our friends, our supporters. And so I went to work today and tried to find some information out about what other folks were doing. That's what I found.
And I guess your study, Ron, which is probably really more accurate as far as.
I just try to look at the folks who live close to us.
That puts us somewhere in the middle, really. I mean,
Well,
we're-
it puts the commission at the 75% range, if you will.
for communities our size.
Communities are, as we were deemed to be, within that population size,
Okay.
yes.
but some of those have different forms of government and different responsibilities,
They do.
Sure. well, I looked at
especially
that.
in the mayor's position.
They do.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it is comparable.
Yeah.
And so, am I reading this correctly, that this is only, that it's only been changed once since 1994?
It has not been changed since 2006. That was the last time it was changed.
So this was established in 94.
94.
It was changed to the current numbers in 2006.
I'm not certain of the history of the 1994 to 2006, whether there's one or more changes during that period of time. But it has not been changed. It was last changed in 2006.
Well, I think that was the last time that we took the COLA. I don't think the actual base salaries, it hadn't been changed since I've been here.
And COLAs, just for clarity, the cost of living adjustments are computed annually by the Department for Local Government. Those are not considered salary changes and are not subject to the limitations of the statute where you've got to enact those changes during that short window that we're in right now during an election year and have them take effect in the following term of office. COLAs are typically taken by governments, if they choose to, anytime during the year based upon that calculation, and they're not considered salary changes, they're just salary adjustments.
But that is, even that hasn't been taken
No,
since
ma'am, it has not.
2006?
To my knowledge, it is not.
There was a couple of years where the staff didn't get one, so we didn't
So we
take
didn't
one.
take
Right.
one
And
either.
then
And
and then
then-
afterwards, it was talked about a couple times.
Yeah, it just never-
And then you decided not to take it all
Yeah.
those years also.
Well, I feel like, well, our county population is around 30,000. It's almost half city and county residents. But we draw 100,000 people to our restaurants for jobs that use our services and our roads and all of our services. And it's funny that the ones that you use as examples, those citizens are coming here to shop and eat and work. So I think, we need to adopt the mentality all around of operating as a larger city than what we actually are. And I think this is part of it. I think our expectations are much higher than our counterparts.
That's for sure.
In that, and I know it's your turn, Commissioner Cotto, but because of those things, we probably meet more often than some other cities as
Absolutely.
well. And we're glad to do it. That's why we stepped up to the plate and did it. I don't think any of us came in here to make a salary, so it's more of a stipend, as when I coached cross-country at Center. That was the term they used, and it was nice to have that payback, because certainly we're taking time away from our profession or our families to give to our community. And again, we're glad to do that, but at some point, it's nice to be paid for it.
Right, and I was going to go there too, is, you know, we're not here for the money, but we do make sacrifices to be here. And you can't put a price on those sacrifices. And sometimes, especially this time of year, my standard response to my children, and now my husband, is I'm in a meeting.
Budget time.
But yeah, but I'm glad to do it. It's just about sacrifices that are made and candidates in the future, and making this appealing
Yeah.
to people who will take our place, because we won't be here forever.
And I think, once again, the citizens of Danville and Bull County are probably not aware of the fact that we receive an honorarium, a stipend, whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure they're not aware of what it is, because when I ran back in 2008, 2009, and started serving in 2010, I didn't have any inclination about what it was, and didn't ask anyone. And when I called on this non-scientific survey, I got every location I got transferred to someone else, and that person had to go and look it up. Nobody knew what the amounts were, and that was like, you don't know, but they didn't know. So they had to go, the Michelle said to go and look it up. So that was pretty interesting as well. And if nothing else, it would be really interesting to get your twists on this, Ben, and to get it out to the community. And my phone number is 238-1300. You're welcome to publish it.
236-2551, how about that?
No, just kidding. No. I think it's, and I really wasn't prepared for this discussion, but it's been brought forward to us, and it's good that we can do it and discuss it openly and share this kind of information. And I didn't see the paper with the fiscal court's numbers in it, but I'm glad they're out there now. So, and you know what? It's is that 7:30?
Yep.
I call for the question. Oh, Kevin wants to say something. I'm sorry.
Let Cottle say something.
According to Rick, I want to say something. I wasn't aware of that yet. I've talked to a couple of you about how I feel. I think that it's been well supported that an increase is warranted. But for me, so I can only speak for myself, and I've never. I mean, I'd forgotten that we hadn't had the COLA in so long. It's not something I ever think about. I appreciate, what the taxpayers do for me now with the small stipend and the health insurance, so I'm good, actually. So, like I say, I've talked to Ron about it. That's not a surprise to anybody, I guess.
So we've heard from everybody. Are you satisfied, Rick? You okay? We've heard from everybody?
And Commissioner Rick, did you have an alternative suggestion?
Well, originally, and I reported this back to Ron, and again, it was baby steps. It was not this big of an increase to step up, and it's certainly not for us. It's for the commission coming, which some of you all will be here, maybe myself, but nothing's guaranteed.
That's true.
We know at least probably 3 people will be here, for sure.
We know the mayor will be here.
The mayor will be.
Okay. Call the question?
Yeah,
He did.
because we've discussed it, debated it, I think, put it out there, and then we've got another special call meeting?
We got a meeting
wait till
next
the May meeting?
Thursday?
My thoughts were that we need to probably to have another discussion of the budget, because there's a lot tonight to contemplate, and that we could have a meeting, say, next Wednesday at a convenient time, either 5:30 or during the day if you wish, to talk about the budget. And if you should pass the first reading of the ordinance tonight, that would be on the agenda for the meeting next week as well. And
Would you explain to the public about why the rush, why the push? Shouldn't say rush, but the push.
well, the timing for a city commission to consider changes in compensation require that it be only done during the year of election and that it be set by the first Monday in May of that year of the election, and that the change in compensation cannot take effect until the beginning of the term of the following elected officials. So that means that in order for that to become effective January 1, 2019, this commission, if it chooses to do so, would change compensation to whatever measure you wish to do in the first reading tonight. And if that should pass tonight, then next Wednesday, you would give it a second reading, and presumably, if it passes tonight, it would pass at the second reading. That would be advertised over that weekend and then be set under the terms of the statutory requirements prior to the first Monday in May.
I will not be here next Wednesday.
Oh, wait a minute now.
It does not have to be a Wednesday. It could be a Tuesday.
Tuesday
May 7th?
would, yeah, I have a family obligation on Wednesday and Thursday out of town, so
Could it go to Monday, May 7th?
No, it can't be on.
It has to be before that
the
day.
first Monday of,
It's got to be
That's the
set
day.
by the
Prior
first
to.
Monday in May. So our window of consideration is this week and early next
It can't
week.
be set on the first Monday of May? Okay.
it can't be on the
Can't be on the
7th.
first
It has
Monday?
to be prior
It
to.
has to be set by the first
First
Monday
Monday.
in May. And Monday would work if it works for you.
That's the
Yeah, Monday's
30th.
usually a pretty good day for me, actually.
I'm not giving anybody, well, that's really not giving anybody time to respond back to us, though. You know, I like to have
That's
that
true.
feedback.
Well, today's Thursday.
They'll have time.
You know, I don't answer calls on the weekend, so we got to give them, oh, just,
If we could do next Monday or Tuesday, that would
It's
be.
your pleasure in terms of
Or we
setting.
could do Wednesday during the day, or in the morning.
It's
How about
whatever the
Friday, May
commission
4th?
For me,
determines.
make it work.
What's that?
what?
So at any of those, I'll make whatever work.
It'll be the four of you then. I'm out of town through Wednesday.
You be back on
And that's
Friday,
fine.
May the 4th?
Pardon me?
You be back on May the 4th?
if we're going to have a budget discussion, we need to do it. I have training next week.
Oh,
Well, I'll say
You'll
we,
be-
You'll be
difficult.
here through Wednesday.
I'll be here through Wednesday. I leave
He won't be
Thursday
back
and I'll be
till
gone for a
Thursday, though,
week.
right?
well,
I'm sorry?
You won't be back until Thursday?
That's
leave on the
correct.
3rd?
Wednesday night, probably. Yeah.
you leave on the 3rd,
I'll be gone all day Thursday. Yeah, I have to leave early that morning.
and you'll be back, you'll be gone till, when do you leave?
Right now, it looks like Monday through Wednesday, but it could change to Tuesdays, Thursdays, so you ought to plan for your all. It's not for me.
Do you want to try to
And-
have it on Monday then?
Well, I'll be leaving that Monday afternoon. It'd have to be in the morning. Well, actually, I already have a meeting in the morning. Just don't plan on me.
No, we all,
I think it's important for us to be here.
well, if at all possible.
You're open anytime.
yeah, yeah.
You're the problem.
Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday?
No, Rick, well,
Anybody have a preference?
yeah, Friday, May
Monday,
the 4th.
Tuesday, or Wednesday morning,
Anytime in the evening? You have any time in the evening?
either, on Monday or
Monday or
Tuesday I do.
Tuesday.
Rick won't be here.
Monday or Tuesday? He's not gonna be here at all.
He'll be here Thursday. But Michelle won't be
Yeah,
here.
but Michelle won't be.
Well, we could just do this one item on Thursday, if all five of us want to be present
one
for it.
Denise won't be here Thursday.
If
I won't
you
be here
wanted to do
Thursday.
She won't
just
be
the one
Thursday.
item, you could do that, but we still have to have it enacted in time to advertise it.
What
the-
about
the weekend?
You won't be here. I
But
was gonna
I
say, what
thought
about Friday
we
the
would-
4th, but
Friday, May
Michelle
4th, for
won't
all
I think
five be
there's gonna
present.
Four, no matter how we slice it.
What?
I think there's just gonna be four, no matter how we slice it next week.
No, it's just going to be three. No, I'm just joking.
well, if we want to do just this one item, because I have another budget meeting scheduled on the 16th, though, we're not going to do that. You want to move it up?
Can't do that, yeah.
I know, but I was saying if we just want to do this ordinance and then
Yeah, that's
keep
all-
that,
That's all.
Yeah.
so then Michelle doesn't have to be here.
Ron thought you might want to discuss the budget also at this special call meeting.
I would, but I think well, I'll come whenever you all set the date. I just think it's important for all 5 of us to be here for a vote on this.
That would be optimal.
Yeah. We've all 5 done everything else together, so
So are we back to Monday?
Monday morning. He said Monday
We
morning.
do it Monday morning.
Monday morning. Can you do Monday morning?
Late. Have to be late morning. I've already have a meeting scheduled with my staff at where I work, 9 o'clock. So,
What time's your window on Monday?
yep, I could probably do 11.
Monday 11.
Monday 11? Sounds good. Before somebody changes their minds, write that down.
Once again, before we vote, this is not necessarily for us. This is for the future.
Yes.
That is a good point.
Yes.
That is a very good point.
Yes.
Okay, so
Monday, 11 a.m.
we have a motion and a second. Do I hear a question? Call for the question.
I think you already did.
What is the, if I could just ask for clarity, is it the amount recommended in the budget?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
So Chair's going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
I won't repeat.
Oh, the motion
We
is
have
that
to roll call.
This is the first reading, right?
Yeah, It's to accept,
We have to roll
it's to
call.
accept Mr. Scott's
The first reading.
recommendation. This is
And on
the
the-
first reading of ordinance number 1913 as proposed.
We have to roll call.
Roll call.
Well, I just keep thinking that Commissioner Suri has another proposal in mind, and if he doesn't make it tonight and we pass this first reading, we come next week.
Yeah, my other
It's the
proposal
second
was,
reading.
is that we baby step it up and we go 7.5, 7,500 per commissioner and 12,500 for the mayor.
Yeah, I wanted to hear that. That's what I was wanting to hear. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not what's on the table right now for voting.
I know. That's why I've been, well, because I want to hear your proposal
Yeah,
before we
okay.
voted on something, because that might change our vote. Still, it's an increase, but it doesn't have to be that.
It's an increase, but it's just it's a half step instead of a full step, if we want to call this a full step, so.
So it's about half of what's in the budget, is what you're saying. You said
Half of
half.
what's been recommended.
Yeah, okay. All right. I can live with that, too. I'm okay either way myself. I
We
just
gotta
want-
make there's a motion.
We got to vote on this.
Second. Question's been called. If you want to discuss it further, we need to vote this motion down and start over. Chair's going to call the question. All in favor of the
You
motion?
have to roll call.
Oh, excuse me.
Roll call.
Commissioner Atkins,
I want to vote no.
Commissioner Terry,
Yes.
Mayor Paris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cottle,
No.
Commissioner Series.
I'll go no, and I'll redo the motion for 7,500 and 12,500.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it. I'm trying to get Commissioner Cottle on board. I'll second it.
He's not coming on board.
No, I'm just trying. That's why I want to hear Rick's proposal, too. It's,
So we have a motion and a second. The floor's open for discussion. I'll make my point. Regardless of what you increase it to, our detractors are going to express themselves at the same intensity level, regardless of whether you do it at the recommended level or at the level of the motions on the floor. We're not satisfying anybody here.
all right. That's a good point, right?
Probably,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah,
probably right.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and I guess the other way I look at it is, it's taken 12 years to do this. When's the next time? 12 years more? So, those are my thoughts.
You have a motion and a second, is that correct?
Yes,
sir.
I'll call for the question.
Call for the question. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Terry?
I guess I'll go with yes.
Mayor Paris?
No.
Commissioner Cottle?
No.
Commissioner Series?
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins?
No?
So we'll go back.
Go back to where you
Unless
started.
somebody else has got another motion, I will restate my motion, which is to accept the recommended increase as per the city manager's due diligence and recommendation tonight.
Plus new shoes.
No new shoes.
Okay.
We're good with that. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
We're in discussion.
Call for the question.
Yes, it's been called. Roll call, please.
Mayor Paris?
Yes.
Commissioner Cottle?
No.
Commissioner Series?
No.
Commissioner Atkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Terry?
Yes. Thank you.
Well, his last statement made sense, that's all.
Is there any further business to come before this commission or the staff? Madam Chair, we'll entertain a motion, we adjourn.
So moved.
I'd like to say we adjourn with thanks to staff.
Absolutely.
Excellent job.
Nice going.
As per,
Do we hear a
as per
second?
usual.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.